Thank you to all the viewers of the Freedom TV channels for being with us. This is our time, and here are the main news stories at this hour. In the studio, Yuri Kovlenich. Hello? Last night, Russian troops attacked the Chernihiv region, injuring 6 people. Among them are 4 employees of the State Emergency Service who went out to extinguish a fire after the shelling of an industrial facility. At that moment, the aggressor launched a second strike, and a 59-year-old resident of the Nizhyn district was also injured. He was taken to the hospital. Residential buildings, critical infrastructure, and businesses came under Russian shelling. In total, 42 attacks on 20 settlements in the region were recorded over the past day. In addition, the Russian army carried out 3 bombing raids on Kramatorsk. For the attack, the aggressor used shells with a fragmentation high-explosive warhead weighing 250 kilograms. The strike hit the central part of the city, and at least 9 people are known to be injured. They have been diagnosed with blast injuries, multiple bruises and cuts, and fractures. Medical assistance is being provided to the injured. Emergency and municipal services are working at the scene. They are eliminating the consequences of the attack. The Sumy region was also under attack. Russian forces struck with 2 missiles at an agricultural enterprise, according to the regional prosecutor's office. As a result of the shelling, 12 people were injured. At that moment, they were harvesting crops. About 30 pieces of agricultural equipment were also damaged by the shelling. Meanwhile, attacks have devastated a Russian military base in the temporarily occupied Crimea. This was reported by the partisan movement Atesh. Agents recorded an almost complete absence of equipment on the base, and the few vehicles remaining appear to be inoperable. Atesh noted this as a clear sign of a shortage of Russian equipment. It is being moved all over the peninsula to protect it from strikes by Ukrainian defense forces. Ukrainian intelligence paralyzed the resources of the Russian Central Election Commission on the day of the regional elections. This was reported to Freedom sources in the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The attack was timed to coincide with the so-called single voting day on September 14, 2025, when so-called elections were held in Russia, including in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. According to sources, the goal of the cyberattack was to disrupt online voting in the illegal elections. Digital services responsible for organizing and conducting this voting came under attack. As a result, the operation of several resources was paralyzed. The United States of America, South Korea, and Japan have begun joint military exercises. This information was confirmed by the South Korean Armed Forces. Naval, air, and cyber forces from all 3 countries are involved in the maneuvers. North Korea considers them a military drill and promises to respond. South Korean officials report that these exercises are scheduled and aimed at countering the nuclear missile threat from North Korea.
The annual Freedom Edge exercises begin today and will continue until Friday, September 19th, with the goal of strengthening deterrence and response capabilities against threats from North Korea related to its advanced nuclear and missile developments.
Meanwhile, North Korea has declared that its nuclear status is permanently enshrined in law and is irreversible. This was stated in a statement by the DPRK's representative office in Pyongyang. At the same time, Pyongyang criticized the push for denuclearization, calling it a provocative act of interference in the country's internal affairs. And its own nuclear weapons are seen as an inevitable means of protection against nuclear threats from the United States of America. U.S. President Donald Trump stated that he does not rule out a meeting between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and dictator Putin, but emphasized that organizing such a meeting would be difficult. He did not specify whether the negotiations would be in a bilateral or trilateral format. At the same time, Trump criticized the Europeans for being too soft on Russia, noting that they talk more than they act. According to him, further American sanctions depend on whether Europe will strengthen its own measures and refuse Russian energy resources.
NATO must unite. Europe must unite and get it done. Listen, Europe, they're my friends, but they're buying oil from Russia. So you can't expect us to be the only ones acting at full capacity. But Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them buying oil. The imposed sanctions aren't tough enough. I'm ready to impose sanctions, but they'll have to toughen their own sanctions. In proportion to what I'm doing. I stopped 7 wars. I thought it would be easy for me, but it turned out to be hard. The hatred between Zelenskyy and Putin is unfathomable. We'll solve this problem one way or another, relatively soon. There will be negotiations. Call it a summit or just a meeting. It doesn't matter.
Europe needs to support Trump's initiative to impose sanctions on countries that buy Russian oil. This was stated by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham in an interview with NBC News. He recalled Trump's call to impose tariffs on Chinese goods that are shipped to Europe. And he noted that if tomorrow the US and Europe together told China that the country would lose access to their economies unless it stopped buying Russian oil, the Russian dictator would change his behavior. He also reminded that Western countries have imposed every possible sanction against Russia, but Moscow has found ways to circumvent them.
Richard Blumenthal's bill has 85 co-authors in the Senate, which would allow President Trump to impose tariffs on countries that buy cheap Russian oil for their own benefit: China, India, and Brazil. This will force China and India to change their attitude toward Putin. And this war will end. Putin is not worried about sanctions. No sanctions have produced any results. He evades the sanctions. He lives well. Lindsey Graham is a U.S. Senator from the Republican Party in an interview with NBC News.
The bill that Republican Lindsey Graham is talking about provides for a 500% tariff on imports from countries that continue to buy Russian oil, gas, ores, and petroleum products. He introduced the bill to Congress back in April together with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal. 85 lawmakers in the Senate support the initiative, and if necessary, the number of votes could reach 90. For the law to take effect, it must be approved by the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then signed by the President of the United States. Competitions were held among Ukrainian defenders who were wounded while carrying out combat missions. Horseback riding, as part of rehabilitation and therapy, helps combatants overcome the consequences of their injuries. More details in the report by Ksenia Sedinskaya.
Emin was born in Mariupol. Since 2014, he has lived in Odessa and has been serving in the defense forces of Ukraine since 2022. While carrying out a combat mission in 2023, he was wounded in the Zaporizhia direction. A mine exploded next to him. Medics were unable to save his left leg. But after a long rehabilitation, Emin now heads a public organization that helps veterans after they return from the front. Only recently did he discover hippotherapy for himself. According to the combat veteran, horses can both calm you down and give you that positive adrenaline that's missing right now.
Military personnel or veterans know that in civilian life, you lack adrenaline. Because you felt adrenaline 24/7, and now it feels like life is passing you by. That's why this is a kind of therapy. You fight your fears. Veterans have a lot of fears now, especially about what their future life will be like. And this is one way to let go, to free your mind from negative thoughts.
But for Vladimir, working with horses helped him overcome his fear of speed, which he developed during his service. He joined the armed forces in 2022, and just a few months ago he was discharged from the army for health reasons.
We were driving in a pickup truck. Swapping out the guys on the SPG. It was winter. We skidded on a turn and crashed into a tree. After that, speed became a trigger for me. At first, I was afraid to get on a horse. When it was walking slowly, it was fine, but when it started doing some maneuvers, I was scared, but now it's much better. In
the all-Ukrainian competitions, combat veterans decided to test their strength for the first time, to perform with dignity on par with professional jockeys. They spent about a month preparing for the races. Therapy also helps Ivan overcome the effects of numerous concussions. He's been on the front lines since 2016. Because of a concussion, he lost his hearing. Now he wears a hearing aid. He emphasizes that every training session with the horses is also physically demanding, but that motivates him to stay in shape.
It was hard for me because I can't hear well, and you need to be able to hear the instructor. Plus, the wind gets into my hearing aid, and on top of that, I have an injury to my hand. It was uncomfortable to hold the horse, but I adapted.
Horse races are held regularly at the Children's Hippodrome. Additionally, they plan to develop a separate area of therapy here specifically for veterans. Ksenia Sidinskaya, Zarapta Daluri from Odessa for Rhythm TV channels.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.